It's a game that's fueled by motivation.
Tonight, to make the game for yourself. Oh, yeah. If you ain't out here to play hard, if you ain't out here to hit somebody in their mouth, again, and again, and again, and again, hit somebody in the mouth each time you get out here. Make the game.
A game that's driven by determination.
Who got my back? I got your back. Who got my back? I got your back.
Tune in to AFT Buzz, your weekly 60-minute program talking everything inside and outside on arena football.
AFT
Buzz. For the best in indoor football talk, this is the place.
You out hit him, you out hustle, you out work him, you out compete.
AFT Buzz, presented by Arena Football Talk. Friday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, only on AFN. XFL2K.com presents AFN Live with Kevin Drake.
They've brought it back, and they've actually done really good, even though their record is 2-2.
Michael Washington Weeks.
I think Los Angeles might be one of those, hotbed, quote-unquote, coaches. I think you'll see a veteran coach in St. Louis to try to bring in the crowd.
Coach Lynn Hart Jr.
Feel each other out, so to speak, and stick with the run game and find plays that work.
John Turner. He was also Peyton Manning's offensive coordinator and quarterback coach over there in Indianapolis. And that Peyton Manning, he was pretty good too, I hear.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of AFN Live. As always, you have your lead, Kevin, along with my co-host, Michael. John isn't here as of this moment. He's currently watching the Season 8 premiere of Game of Thrones. I know probably a lot of people that are listening in are watching and listening at the same time. You are our dedicated viewers. And we also have RJ Ciancio of Ciancio Speaks Sports. RJ?
Thank you guys for having me here again.
Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure.
So, unfortunately, as we all know, the Alliance has folded, so you're not going to get your weekly update of scores. But we still have Alliance to talk about, because as we have come to find out in the last couple of weeks, players can't go to the Canadian Football League, and their contracts apparently have kept them from doing so. And on my end, I think that's pretty effed up. Michael, what do you think?
I'm baffled by it. I think more than anything, I'm not really understanding the reasons why they're not allowed to go to the CFL, especially considering the league has ceased all football operations. And the last time I knew, the players were completely terminated from their contracts, so making them free agents. I know that we saw someone sign with the Arena Football League, and there's been 30-plus players that have signed with the NFL. But that's pretty small numbers compared to the amount of players that were in the AAF. So there's something I'm missing, I guess, as far as the point and the reason for it with the CFL, especially now that the operations have completely ceased. I think these young men deserve an opportunity and chance to go play, even if it is in the Canadian Football League. So I think it's pretty messed up that these contracts have stopped them from going to the CFL. I'm sure it was a prior, contract verbiage in the contract that prevented them from going to the CFL because they were trying to be, kind of like a developmental side of things. Maybe not necessarily for the NFL, but just developmental in general. But I'm baffled as to why these guys still haven't got an opportunity and chance to go to CFL and play some football.
Right. I mean, I'm looking at it. These contracts are null and void now. Like, you have players going out the woodworks because, they have debt bills now because apparently their rooms weren't paid for and they were kicked out immediately from where they were staying. So I'm trying to figure out how you can tell someone, hey, just because you're out of a job and you're not playing football, you can't go over there. You can only go here. You can't go there. So I'm thoroughly confused. Like, RJ, this is something that's really out of it. So,
all right. So, for me, I first of all, I sympathize with the players. No one wanted this to happen, and I feel bad that, they got kicked out. That's not horrible. I want to play devil's advocate for a second. If it's in the contract, no matter how stupid it sounds, if it's legally binded to them in the contract, they got to go by it. I mean, you read the fine print, and these are the reasons
RJ,
to do that.
Not to cut you off, buddy. I'm sorry. Yeah, the contracts are void, though. I mean, shouldn't they be able to go to the CFL regardless if there was a verbiage in the contract beforehand, though?
They should be able to. I'm not saying what the Alliance is doing or is right, but I mean, I guess the question now is who's going to be the first one to test the waters? I mean, who really thinks that they can? I mean, what are you going to say to the AAF about them being null and void the contracts? Because I don't know the verbiage of the contract. If the player puts out what was on the contract, I think it'll make it a lot easier for us to judge. Right now, I feel bad for the players, but as far as I know, with the contracts, it's just difficult to judge. I think if you really believe that you have the right to go there, test the waters. By all means, go for it. There are some guys there that are making it to the NFL, but certainly should not be in the indoor leagues right now, like Malachi Jones and Fabian Guerrera. Those are two great players. If they wanted to go test that, I'd say I'm not going to stop you, but do it at your own risk.
Yeah, but I mean, if football operations have stopped, you're not getting paid, you aren't contacted by any of the representatives of this organization anymore, why should you follow by the contract? Why should you be scared by someone be like, oh, you go there, you're going to have ramifications? Like, what's the point in that? Because here's the problem with these players. There was a whole other league that basically played off the emotions of these guys called the National Gridiron League. And it set up places claiming it was going to do stuff and it pushed its launch date back. There was North American Football League did something similar. It turned out it was a grand scheme. It was fraud. Now, see, these players invest basically everything they have into these opportunities. So it will cost them money to go up to Canada to try out for these teams if there's an open tryout of any sort. All of this, like, travel costs, they don't have the money to do that. They work second jobs, regardless of what league they play in, especially if you're playing in these indoor leagues. They work second jobs during the off season. These guys don't have the luxury of having a ton of money to go up to Canada and say, hey, here's my tryout. Oh, I didn't get it. Well, I still have money back home. No, this is their livelihood. They can't risk it all on the line.
So let me ask you a question, RJ, here. In your opinion, do you think that there's going to be, a player that's going to maybe file a lawsuit against the AAF to try to get out of this clause for whatever this may be? I mean, I think the players absolutely should. I mean, this is ridiculous at this point in time. You had an investor that came in and pulled the plug on, pulled the rug out from, everybody without really anybody knowing other than himself, and ceased all these football operations. And now he's basically saying, you can't go to the CFL. Another thing that tells me is the verbiage in the contract probably tells me there was a no-compete clause for the CFL. Maybe not so much for the Arena League, because maybe they don't seem, maybe they didn't deem the Arena League to, because I mean I know in WWE, when a wrestler gets terminated from their contract, there's generally a no-compete clause within the United States for other promotions. So it might have been something similar to that, and they just focused on the CFL.
It's somebody is going to make a move. The person who would have been the best chance to do that, who already had mindset aside, was Johnny Manziel. The only problem with that is Johnny Football got barred from the CFL, so there goes that idea. I mean, are you really going to have Hackenberg try this?
To revitalize his career, probably.
If you're looking at people with the most money to try it, I guess it might be Trent Richardson or Christian Hackenberg trying it.
Yeah, but Trent's older, so he doesn't really need to.
It's crazy.
But I mean, that's like looking at let's look at Hackenberg. He didn't make it in the NFL. He didn't make it in the AAF. The Arena League, the Indoor League, CFL are his only options now, because he's shown that in two primetime leagues, even though the AAF was still building itself, he couldn't make it. So, Coach, tell me, if he were to go to like the indoor or even arena league, what do you think his chances are to succeed?
Are we talking about Manziel?
No, we're talking about Hackenberg.
Oh, Hackenberg. Guys like Hackenberg probably won't entertain opportunities in the indoor football league, possibly arena. Guys like Mekhi Jones and Fabian, who you were talking about earlier when I first jumped on, those guys have existing relationships with organizations in, the indoor football leagues that they're in. So a lot of times, I was just at a small school pro day just yesterday, and a lot of times it's all about just continuing to gather accurate film. And I think that's really what these guys are trying to do that have existing relationships with the indoor football leagues that are out there and the arena league.
I mean, true, but like RJ, you said a couple of players have actually been signed by arena and indoor leagues. And Michael, you said 30 players have been added to the NFL, including the likes of Brandon Silvers and Garrett Gilbert and all these other players. But like we look at wide receivers, because I haven't seen like all the names that have gone through, but you got Mikael McKay, Greg Ward, and then all the other receivers. You haven't heard much about them though, and they were stars on their respective teams. So I mean, you look at all these players that aren't in the limelight right now. Do you think we hear about them signing or what?
Well, I know that the Eagles have signed at least a handful of AAF players that I can think of off the top of my head, two of them being receivers. They actually signed Greg Ward Jr., who was in their camp last year before he got cut on final cuts and ended up playing in the AAF in San Antonio. And Charles Johnson from Orlando, he actually signed on with Philadelphia, both at one-year deals. The problem that I'm having is because the AAF was so quick to get out of operations that guys like Charles Johnson and Greg Ward are just going to be put through the ringer again. It's going to be the same, circle of process for the NFL. I mean, a lot of these guys were ex-NFL players anyways. I believe week one, CBS showed a graphic that said 92% of the players in the AAF had already played in the NFL at some level.
Yeah.
So they're going back to the NFL to go into the same, situation that they were in. Like I talked about Garrett Gilbert a few times on the show and how I felt like Miami would have been a good spot for him to go because he could have competed for a starting job.
Yeah, he could have probably taken it from Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And then he ended up in Cleveland. And as much talent as Garrett Gilbert has, and as much as, our producer Harry wants to believe that there's a quarterback controversy, there's no quarterback controversy there. Baker Mayfield is the clear-cut starter in Cleveland, and the fact that he came in last year and
high school, you don't know.
Yeah, there's a difference though. There's a difference.
There really is.
But Gilbert can start in the NFL, and he should have, at least entertained the idea of trying to go to a team with a little bit of a weaker quarterback situation. So I don't know what, obviously happened too much with conversations between him and the NFL, but. Carolina, he turned a contract down with them, but Cam Newton might miss the whole season. Yeah. So it's unfortunate because I think if Gilbert had at least finished out the AAF, if Orlando had won the championship and then moved on to a second season, and let's say he came back and dominated again, he would absolutely have gone the Kurt Warner route and been a starter, or at least had a chance to start in the NFL.
Well, I'm pretty sure looking at.
One second about Warner. Warner was not given a starting job off the bat. People forget this. He was backed up to Trent Green, who got dirty hit from Ronnie Harrison in the knee. So if you're going to go Kurt Warner route, that means you don't get a starting offer from the NFL. You come in as a backup, and someone gets hurt.
Yes, absolutely, and I don't disagree with that. But he was also put into a situation with Trent Green where Green was already kind of fizzling out. So there was a chance and an opportunity, and actually that preseason, Warner was already pushing Green as far as the preseason was concerned because Warner had made such strides. So Green was the incumbent, but I think it would have been a matter of time before Warner had taken over.
Well, see, that's why I'm looking at training camp, I'm looking at preseason, and all throughout there. I think Gilbert, if he shows enough, if they take his AAF tape and then training camp and preseason, and he does well, I think a team like Miami, or even if John Gruden wants to entertain the idea of getting rid of Derek Carr, he gets picked up by Oakland or Las Vegas right now, or even the Redskins, because they have Case Keenum, Alex Smith, and Colt McCoy. So I mean, Garrett has time. He can build with the Browns. He can throw to Jarvis and Odell. He can hand the ball to Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt and everything for the time being. But if he proves himself enough in the training camp preseason, I think a team comes along and says, "Hey, Cleveland, give me,"
I would love for that to happen, honestly, because I think Gilbert, like I said, I think that out of all the quarterbacks at the AAF level, he was easily NFL starting caliber. 100%.
Oh yeah, he was the only quarterback that he went to a snow game in Salt Lake and threw passes like it was nothing, better than what most quarterbacks in the NFL do in the snow. So I mean, he showed that he has the potential to be a starter. I just honestly, in my opinion, instead of going straight to Miami and dealing with all what they're doing, because they're in rebuild mode, they are going absolutely. To Cleveland. I think if Baker were to get hurt for a week and he couldn't play, I think Garrett has a better opportunity with the Browns right now than he would in Miami.
Well, he'd have a better chance of winning for sure. I mean, because we know that Miami's obviously going to be, this year's version of the Atlanta Legends. But I mean, no offense, no offense to Legends fans out there, but I mean, I still think that it would have given him an opportunity to chance and showcase that he could at least prove to the league once and for all, I belong.
But wait. When you say Atlanta Legends, don't you mean 2017 Browns?
Oh, well. That too.
But I mean, that's going into it. We have players that are creating lawsuits and they are taking the AF to court. And then you have executives and coaches that are coming out and stating it's yeah, we were misled. We only took the jobs because we were told one thing, and then all of this happened later. So when you look at this organization and you look at what Dundon did and Ebersol did, even though Ebersol, it seems like he had no really bad intentions at all, but Dundon did throughout. What do you think happens in court with these players and executives that are taking them to court?
Well, I honestly, I just don't know. I don't know what to expect from these lawsuits. I mean, we expected these lawsuits were going to pop up, especially when it comes to Ebersol and Dundon. And, I personally don't agree with Bill Polian being mentioned in here, because from everything that I've heard and read, that Polian was more on the football operation side of making sure the quality of play was good. And Polian's really the only one that's come out and made a statement and has set up, some helplines for some of these players to try to get some, to get somewhere, the fans to get refunded for things. I don't know what the lawsuits are going to do other than possibly recoup some of the expenses that these players have had to shell out of pocket for. But Dundon has clearly made himself, and Ebersol's silence has been completely, telling, in my opinion. But these two guys, have a target on their back to be public enemy number one from AF fans and whatnot. So the lawsuits, I'm not 100% sure what it's going to do. The only thing I can think of is if the AAF is truly holding on to a core group of people to try to look at the finance sides and restructure things, there's a possibility they could put the foot in the door to try to rebuild the AAF from bottom or scratch, or relaunch under a different name with different investors and different people. But I don't know, other than just trying to recoup some expenses, if it's going to be too much, if there's going to be enough done to do really any significant damage to Dundon or Ebersol in this situation.
Well, here's what I think. I think if the players unionize in some way and present one collective lawsuit with everybody's account of what happened, I think has somewhat of a chance. If they just fire them off left to right, these lawsuits, and they get lost up the wazoo, it's not going to go. I think the court's going to say, we saw this before, we didn't like it, we're not going to take it. I think that the AAF, some people at the AAF are in the wrong here? Absolutely. I hope the players I think the players may not just be suing for finances, but and I don't know for who, especially the guy who broke his arm, they could, and some of these guys, because of how much they put into this. I'm not saying they should, but I wouldn't be stunned if someone says emotional damages. I'm not going to say how I feel about that, but I won't be stunned if I see it.
I mean, true. But, I mean, look at all the players that have already been signed, though. Since they're already signed, do you think they would even entertain the idea of going to court, or do you think they would just stick around and be like, I got another job afterwards, it's whatever?
Well, I think it's important here to touch base on the fact that these contracts they're getting are non-guaranteed. A lot of these contracts are there's no guaranteed money involved in them. A lot of the contracts that are being offered are for the minimums. The 1 year non-guaranteed deals with no signing bonuses. So these guys are still, they get a chance to live out their dream and to hopefully, make some money, with these contracts. But there's no guaranteed money involved with these contracts. Unlike with the AAF, they were getting guaranteed money. So even though they have a second opportunity and a second chance, the likelihood if any of them end up being, kind of getting scrapped down there for, medical expenses or whatever other expenses that they endured during the season, then there's a very good possibility that you will see them latch on to some lawsuits at this particular, a little bit later on for sure.
Well, okay. So let's look at this with the players that have already signed for NFL teams, and then we look at the XFL still pushing and pushing. I mean, they're doing a couple of things in the next coming weeks, but let's look at the draft real quick. With these signing of these players, even though they're not guaranteed as of right now because they just got picked up, do you think that teams that sign these players, they look at the draft and be like, okay, since we already have this player, we have tape on them, and they went against NFL caliber players, do you think that could even potentially change draft war rooms where people just think, oh, if we already have this, we don't need this? What do you think, Coach?
Well, one thing, I think the NFL right now, particularly with OTAs and mini camps coming up, they're stocking their teams to get depth. These guys that played in the AFL, like you guys have talked about, a lot of them did have NFL experiences as Michael said, of some kind. Now, are they better football players? They'll get that opportunity to prove that. The draft picks are just the same as the AAF guys who just signed for the most part outside, after the first 4 rounds. 5th, 6th, 7th round guys aren't even making teams anymore. So at the end of the day, you have to be able to come in and beat somebody out. So I don't think it's going to really have that much of an impact. The NFL, they were going to sign players regardless. These guys would have just been in a position where they most likely wouldn't have been playing football to show more of their skill set. So they got that opportunity. That's been proven by the 30 plus players that have signed in the NFL since the league suspended operations. And I don't think it'll have that much of an impact on drafting coming up here in a few weeks.
Oh, you got to figure. Also, there's 32 teams, 7 rounds, plus compensation picks. I think it's something like 260 players that are drafted every year in the NFL. Of that 260, there's probably, a good 190-ish or so players that actually make rosters and have some sort of impact that don't get hurt or anything along those lines. The AAF was just providing a very good opportunity for these guys to add more to their film, add more to their tape, show that they could still play at a professional level. But like Coach said, I don't necessarily think it would have made too much of an impact because the draft is going to replenish a lot of these guys anyways. So I think it just would have been a filtration system the whole time if the AAF had stuck around.
Okay. But, okay. Now let's look at it this way. If the NFL is picking these players, the best of the crop, like Garrett Gilbert, Brandon Silvers, and all these players, do you think the NFL is doing, like the teams are looking at this like, oh, we grab them now, they won't go to the XFL next year?
Well, I think that the XFL, I mean, a lot of people seem to speculate that the NFL has got an eye on the XFL. I don't know if the NFL is paying that close attention at this particular moment in time to the XFL. I think it's a mistake that they aren't, because they absolutely should. But, the XFL has come out and specifically said that, their tier 1 players and their tier 2 players, I believe, I did read that somewhere, will be offered XFL exclusive only contracts, which means they can't play somewhere else while, under contract for the 3 years in the XFL, but their Tier 3 and Tier 4 players will be able to move freely over the course of the years that they sign with the XFL. So it could be the NFL's opportunity and chance to say, you know what, we're going to pluck the best of the best and hope that the XFL, doesn't get these players. But at the end of the day, it's really down to the 32 teams in the NFL how they want to manage their roster, because they go into preseason with 120 players now on a roster, or 96. It was 96, and I think they bumped it to like 120 to start off, and then they have to make periodic cuts throughout the course of the preseason to get it down to the 53-man roster. So I mean, it could be, but I think at this particular moment in time, there's always going to be that one or two players that slips through the cracks that we didn't really know about, like the Mikal McKays of the world and the Greg Wards, type of situation. And I think the XFL has an opportunity, a chance to snag some of those players.
I mean, honestly, they do. I mean, let's look at the wide receiver portion that we have in the draft this year. Like, honestly, Greg Ward and Mikal McKay, if they don't make it onto a roster, the XFL will just be like, all right, they were good in the AAF, pick them up. Because when it comes to the draft, even undrafted players, the wide receiver core, it's just nonstop craziness. But then let's look at Justin Ross from Clemson, what he said, that players in the NCAA will flock to the XFL because they want to play immediately. When that came out, when he stated that kind of brought up a lot of stuff from other organizations and players around the country, where they were like, yeah, we support that because it's an opportunity to just go right in and play. How do we look at it like that when it comes to like NFL scouting? There's like, oh, that would be a good player to have, and then they just go to the XFL. What do you think that does in terms of how teams and the NFL in general as an organization go about it?
I think that for the XFL, the idea of not putting in a buffer period for players to come play professional football is actually smart for them, because if those Tier 3 and Tier 4 contracts aren't going to be XFL exclusive and give them an opportunity to go through other football organizations. Coach mentioned to me, an 18-year-old kid at a high school can't play with grown men. And that is very possibly the truth. And it's very possibly not smart for some of these 18, 19-year-olds that want to get out and go play. But if they're going to be coming from high school to the XFL, those Tier 3 and Tier 4 contracts at that 3-year buffer means they can stick around on a roster, hit the weights, learn professional style football while getting paid. And then, we bumped up to Tier 2. So now we signed another exclusive contract. Now we're XFL exclusive. I was born and bred through the XFL because they gave me an opportunity when I was 18. I didn't have to go to college and, bust my tail and suffer 2 ACL injuries like, Marcus Lattimore did, and then not really ever get a chance to get back into the swing of things. He lost 3 rounds and dropped it, lost a lot of money. So I think that it's a good system for them because those Tier 3 and Tier 4, they can supply their rosters without having to worry about them leaving to the NFL. And those guys can continue to grow, hit the weights, and learn from the guys that have been there before at the Tier 1, Tier 2 levels that aren't going to go back to the NFL because they've been there and never got an opportunity and chance to play.
I mean, true, but when you say learn professional style, XFL is changing those, though. Like, they're experimenting with taking away 3-point stance. They're 5 yard. You have to stop 5 yards before going near the punt returner, so they have a opportunity to return the punt. If they were to go to the XFL and they learn all this, and then in the Tier 3 and 4, and they take time to learn professional style, but then they realize they're learning something different than the XFL, how do they take the time to understand? It's just like, I gotta do this, I gotta make sure I don't do this and this and this. How do you think a mindset of maybe wanting to go to the NFL, but be in the XFL for a little bit. How do you think that would go about? Because they have to learn two different styles at that point.
I'm going to relate this to indoor football because there are a ton of indoor football players who get tryouts with, CFL and even NFL teams. And I think there's a massive learning curve when you have to jump back and forth the first time, but after a couple times of doing it, I imagine you get used to it. I imagine you build up tolerance to it. So for the first couple seasons where people are going to try to, like, the tier 3 and tier 4, might be looking to other places, it might be hard for them. But as the XFL develops, that's going to be less of a problem because more and more players will have said, here's what you do in a transition. You don't do X, Y, and Z. You do A, B, and C. So I think it will be a short-term issue, but long-term, it will not harm the league as much as it sounds like it will.
And Kevin, don't make the mistake that these guys might want to go to the NFL. They might want to stay right with the XFL.
Well, true. I'm just saying, like, if they,
I'm just pointing out a point that the XFL has got 700, got a very powerful, billionaire behind them that wants to make this league successful. And if they get enough fans and enough following before long, that XFL could easily become the springtime version of the NFL, and they may not want to leave the XFL. They may make a choice to stay.
Exactly, because they're announcing the general manager and head coach for the New York team this coming Tuesday, aren't they?
They are. Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, they're doing this in a way to where people are coming back each week. It's like, what's happening? What are they doing? Are they announcing? What are they doing? So the XFL is doing a lot of marketing things right, where like Mark Trestman in Tampa Bay, not Steve Spurrier, but Bob Stoops in Dallas, and then we still have Houston and a bunch of other teams to get announced, and then you have the team owner, I believe, for Los Angeles, which is I can't remember her name, but it's a female marketing. I forgot where I was going with that, with the wording, but I messed up. Okay, but my bad. But she's marketing. She's going to take over for team spending and how they're going to do merchandising and stuff like that. And then when the general manager or the head coach come in, they're going to deal with football operations. So they're literally telling us is like, hey, we're doing this each week. We're giving you the names and information and resumes of what personnel we hire to get you involved and to know who they are before we actually start up, along with being like, hey, we don't have a football mind running it, like owning a team. That's marketing. That's human resources and everything. We're going to let the general manager and head coach take over the football operation part of it. So, I mean, they're telling you it's like, hey, we're doing this right. We're doing things differently. And we're going to make sure that you want to be involved when we do start up next year.
Yeah, they've done a very good job of also getting head coaches and GMs that are tied to certain regions. Like Pep Hamilton in D.C., he's got roots in D.C., and Jim Zorn in Seattle, as we all know, he was a quarterback up there and still has a house out and never left Seattle, was still living there even when he was coaching in Washington with the Redskins. So they're doing a very good job of making sure that they're putting people in place that have roots in certain areas. The Los Angeles, president, marketing, her resume isn't fantastic as far as like a lot of sports related stuff, but she was, the marketing manager for the LA football club down there for the MLS. So I mean, they have the ties. So it's been good to be able to generate local buzz for these teams. And I'm interested to see who they take on for New York. That's for sure.
Exactly. And it's something to watch out for because now with the AAF folding and then social media being a big part of why it happened, because everything just got out in an instant and riots and everything, people losing their minds. And then the XFL with Oliver Luck and Vince McMahon being at the helm of all this, Vince McMahon using everything he's ever learned from WWE and be able to put that at the forefront. And then Oliver being as football minded as he is, especially with his son Andrew being the quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts. I mean, they have the tools and the resources and assets to succeed in a major way to rival the NFL. It's all a matter of what we see on the field next year. Because, I mean, in the spring league in Texas, when I think it was a broadcast last weekend, they actually had in the bottom left-hand corner XFL because they were using rules. They were experimenting with the rules and regulations that they're going to use in the XFL for the Spring League, which I thought was very interesting.
The Spring League is this really cool thing. I think it doesn't get enough credit because it's basically a training camp for those who are not yet signed to the NFL deals. And I think that's much needed because there are players who need to refine their skills a little bit, but don't need to spend another season in the indoor leagues, to refine their skills. I think the fact that they are in the Spring League working on what they have to work on, is a great thing. They've sent players to great places. Heck, they're the reason Johnny Manziel got into the CFL.
Yeah, true, because it was only one season there, and then he went up there to Michael, what's the name of the first team that he went to?
The Hamilton Tiger Cats.
Yeah, the Tiger Cats. And then he jumped over to the team that he was on, and then he got banned.
Yeah.
Hey, Coach, I wanted to touch base here when we talk about the Spring League a little bit and different rules that they were. You touched base earlier about when we were talking about the transition for some of these guys. Do you think that the different styles of the indoor football league or the National Arena League, I mean, I'm sure that they each have their own sets of rules, but do you think that the transitions and the ins and outs of each football organization, do you think that hinders certain skill position? I say skill position players because that's what everybody calls them, but that certain players from being able to make that full-fledged transition to the NFL because the style is so different that they don't actually develop or get the repetition for that style?
No, not necessarily. A couple things that come to mind, and what we're talking about. First of all, guys, remember the Spring League is expensive. It's about $2,000 per player. So that's going to take a lot of your prospects out of the mix. $2,000 is a lot of money, but it's $2,000 for a reason. They get the guys who are serious, the guys who are going to come there and not get in trouble, and things of this and that. Indoor leagues are for guys who are not quite on the radar yet, so they can get some film that they can send to teams themselves, or if they have an agent, which some guys do, there's not really much of a need for an agent on any arena or indoor leagues per se that I've been involved with. But those are guys that are off the map, and again, it comes down to talent. If you have talent, you won't have any problems transitioning, so you accept the fact that you're playing in an indoor or arena league with different rules that you have to abide by to get that film and be able to perform and show the skill set that you have. Let's not forget, guys, the NFL is the top football players in the world. Okay, so in my own personal belief, the XFL, none of these other leagues are going to challenge them, rival them, or anything. I do agree that a player of a certain age that's bounced around, say a number of leagues, or bounced around in the NFL. Heck, I know guys who've been cut, waived, released 9, 10, a dozen times. Maybe that guy finds his happy spot in the XFL, is making a good enough contract that he can take care of his family. And my thing has always been for prospects and in the game of football, find a league where you can take care of your family. Your career is only going to be but 3 years or so anyway. The 3.2 years life existence in the NFL for a player. So find a league that can help you take care of your family, and you can play football while you have the opportunity to. So to answer your question, I don't think so at all.
That's fair. I was just wondering, I know that there's been a lot of talk about how like the spread offenses and the air raid systems in the college level, kind of, supposedly hinder a little bit of development from, offensive linemen to quarterbacks to wide receivers, because there isn't really a route tree that's run by wide receivers. So when they get to the NFL, they have a whole new list of things that they have to do. So I just didn't know if maybe with your experience with the arena leagues, if there was any actual correlation to that or not, or if it was just kind of like people kind of reaching a little bit for certain things. That's all.
Yeah, it can be at times, and route running has a lot to do with it, but that's also a separating factor too. Just because teams run spread offenses and this and that, you know what? If you go to a practice, they're still running 10-yard outs, they're running skinny posts, they're running hitches, comebacks. So those are things that are separators. And also, don't forget, in my own personal opinion, again, the NCAA is still and always will be the training ground for the NFL. So any other league that pops up, again, is for some of those overlooked prospects and things of that nature. So it's just additional opportunity here in the United States to play 11-man football, which I'm a big fan of, because I do think it's hard to make it from an indoor league. If you really take a close look in the leagues that I've been involved in and the players that I've been involved with, generally wide receivers and defensive backs stand the best chance to go from an indoor or an arena league to the NFL.
That is fair. That is fair.
I mean, you want to talk about the air raid offense. I mean, if they're going to move up to the NFL, they'll just go to Arizona with Cliff Kingsbury.
Oh, Jesus.
Am I wrong?
Yes, you are.
Okay. I'm sorry. I was thinking about Texas Tech for a little bit. My bad.
Cliff Kingsbury won 5 games with Patrick Mahomes' best season.
True.
Like, it was his best season his senior year. They won 5 games that year. Like, I'm supposed to expect Kingsbury to turn a 2-14 franchise around by drafting an undersized Kyler Murray.
Well, I mean, they were in the Big 12 where there's no defense, so
none. No
I mean, but that's like looking at the Arena League and the Indoor League. They have a big following. They don't get pushed like the NFL does, or like the AAF was, or the XFL is. But they've been around for decades. So I mean, the Arena League and the Indoor League, even though most people look at it, it's just like, oh, those are lesser known people that don't play as well. And it's just like, that's not necessarily true. Yes, the NFL has a pedigree and has players that are extraordinary and that they make us regular people look like we're nothing. But these players still go out there and they still have their dreams. Even if it's not NFL, even if it's not XFL or Arena or AAF, they go to the Arena League because they want to play. They go to the Indoor League because they want to push themselves to get better and to eventually either go to the NFL or make their names in the indoor or arena and become a prominent player in that organization,
Yeah, I mean, people like Aaron Garcia, who played for the New York Dragons for a long time, Clinton Dozel, currently you have your Charles McCollums, your Tyron Laughing-Houses, your Jordan Jollies. Those are all legends in the indoor football community. And, they kind of embrace that status and have that swagger about them. But what I can tell you is sober about indoor football is that no one is a prima donna in those leagues. People may think they're better than they are, but they aren't arrogant, demanding huge contracts. These people have second jobs. These people are relatable. I mean, I got my season tickets to New York Street, and I know these guys hold down, second jobs. So, like, if they're playing, the Westchester Civic Center. So, and I sometimes go to Westchester. If I see them during like another time of the year, like, I don't know, maybe at a car dealership selling me a car. I mean, that's cool. That's relatability. That's saying, you know what? They aren't teaching this like holier than thou like presence. They are just like you and me, but they're out there living their dreams and we're loving it. And there are players who have graduated from the indoor game that have varying degrees of successes in the NFL. Kurt Warner is a prime example of that. Jay Gruden played indoor ball at one point, and he went on to coach the Redskins. He coached the Orlando Predators, who made the return to action last night, defeating who did they defeat? They beat the Columbus Lions. That's right. So there are these players who, are great players. I mean, you have guys like Sean Brackett, Darren Thomas. I could go on and on with the names, but it's a high caliber of play, and it deserves more exposure. The issue is getting TV deals. The Arena Football League the Arena Football League at its peak, and Coach, you can attest to this, was the spring league that everybody loved. It had its own developmental league in Arena Football too. I mean, it was just amazing how big it was. I mean, like, what were some of the best experiences you've had with that, Coach?
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. And the industry has changed, as you know, over the last 10 or 15 years, especially since Arena 2 has been taken from us. And that breeded a lot of the indoor leagues. Now, you mentioned Jay Gruden and Kurt Warner. They were playing in the Arena League where you could take care of a family if you had a contract in that league. And when they went underground in, I believe, 09 or 2010, whatever, and they came back with a different model, and the industry's been changed forever. But you are totally right. And they had a developmental program with players, officials, and coaches with the NFL. And that's something that they don't have anymore. So that's why you see so many people that want to get to the NFL scrambling to make it in whatever way they can, whether it's in the IFL, whether it's in the Arena League, or they can get, a stint in the Spring League. So I really miss the original model of the Arena League and Arena 2 with their developmental system with the NFL and so many different phases that they had.
I absolutely love arena football. And when it was around, I was big into it. And when it shut down for I think it was the 2009 season, Coach, for that 1 year, and then they came back, I just didn't know where to look. I think that, I've been watching the indoor football league through the YouTube channel, and I downloaded the Arena Football League app because they got 6 teams this year, expanding from 4. They have a live option on their app. And we had a team up here in the National Arena League up here in Maine. So that we're hoping that will come back next year after ceasing operations just for the year while they look for new ownership. I'm excited for Arena Football League in its future. But I would definitely like to see. Do you think it's feasible that one of these leagues could end up getting like a small time TV deal with like ESPN3 or something?
I personally don't think so until they do come. There's so many leagues out there. There would have to be a combination. Somebody would have to almost combine the Arena League. What they have 6 teams. The IFL is spread out all over. YouTube has done wonders, as you mentioned, for exposure and garnering additional fans. And I'm very familiar with the Now, which was in your area with the Maine Monmouths. So I don't think so at this point, because the Arena League needs to get to the point where they have at least 8 to a dozen teams, and then I could see a TV contract of something come back. At this point in time, I don't see an indoor league getting it, just because it's just not viable in the minds of football people and football executives.
Yeah, because
I mean, I think that's very true. After you, sorry.
No, it's fine. By all means, go ahead, RJ.
Okay, so I mean, technically, and I'm kind of stuck in the definition of indoor football here, so bear with me. But I mean, if you're going to tell me the Legends Football League has a contract, I mean, I don't know why that is. Okay, let's not beat around the bush. But I mean, for those who claim they watch for the quality of play, I mean, if they're able to somehow secure a deal, I'm not saying you're going to get ESPN, but you might be able to land like a Spike TV or a smaller network and work your way up there. I mean, what some leagues do is they work with them, like the regional TV stations for coverage for home games. That's what I saw with the National Arena League. That's what they do in the Indoor Football League. I think what happens with these indoor football leagues is they have so much pride. A couple seasons back, Champions Indoor Football and the Indoor Football League had this huge debacle. Sioux Falls Storm and Wichita Falls Nighthawks switched leagues, did the West Michigan Ironman trying to jump from CIF to IFL, but then the CIF is like, no, you can't do that, and then they get suspended for play from a year. All these leagues have so much pride. It's kind of like the territory days of professional wrestling. Each one has a little quirk, and people go from each one to continue their careers. So the question is, with these interleagues, is when is our Vince McMahon going to come and sweep them all up under one umbrella? That's the big question. And obviously that took a lot of time. I think it's going to take a long time for the sport to reach the height it had in the mid-2000s. But, I mean, there is a precedent, and that's the important thing. Because when people are focusing on the AFL, there was also the National Indoor Football League for a while. That was a big player. So, like, you can, right, I mean, at one point, the Indoor Football League, into my mind, it still is the prominent league of indoor football and the excellence it can be. And they're trying to secure some Western markets right now. It has potential, but it takes time. And a lot of people are starting up teams now, and you're seeing, like, more rinky-dink type things in the American Arena League. Pittsburgh Defenders come to mind when I talk about that. And I think everybody and their mother is starting a team now, and, it gives an appreciation of, oh, man, this is hard, So I think with every league, is if you get one successful team come out of it, whether, it was the Omaha Beef out of the IPFL, I believe it was, as long as you can get some success all over the country, eventually they can form something bigger than what all the teams were originally, and then come back to a national presence.
Well, the main reason I even mentioned ESPN3 is because I have the ESPN app and I have ESPN Plus, and I'll go through and just kind of look at see what the live programming is, and I can't tell you how many screens I had to scroll before I got rid of curling or the National Cornhole Tournament off my screen. And
really?
No joke. And then like with Fox Sports 2, like, I had this conversation, with Harry, our producer, a couple nights ago, and Fox Sports 2 has professional bull riding, and even though that they're big in certain areas to go to live, I can't imagine that it's drawing large numbers on Fox Sports 2. That's going to take up an hour and a half of my time to watch, a cowboy get kicked off a bull. Going to it live, sure. On TV,
hey, bull riding is nice.
It is nice, and going live, absolutely. But I can't imagine that it's drawing a large crowd to watch on TV. So, and
have
when
you
I was
been to
watching,
Texas?
I have, but I'm just saying, as far as like actually going to an event, yes, absolutely. But watching it on TV, I can't imagine. And I brought it up because I was watching the Arizona Rattlers, last week dump 91 on the San Diego Strike Force, and the little YouTube marker as far as like viewers watched, it was almost reaching six figures. So it was a pretty well watched, live. So I just was wondering if there was an opportunity or chance that if the Indoor Football League was able to kind of get things together to be able to maybe try to strike a deal with, one of those lesser like CBS Sports or NBC Sports type things.
I think
Impact does.
I think talking about that, and RJ knows this, and you mentioned some of the lesser leagues. So first of all, there's 4 viable leagues as far as I'm concerned. There is the original Arena Football League, and then if we go to talking indoor, I respect the IFL, I respect the CIF, and I respect the NOW. Those other leagues, like the American Arena League and this and that, they're playing in soccer houses and things of this nature, forfeiting games, having teams no show, things of that nature. One thing I would like to see with all of the leagues that I mentioned, let's just take the 3 indoor leagues that I mentioned, there's different parameters to join the leagues. There's different type of funding that it takes to join the leagues. A lot of that has to do with travel. The CIF is very difficult to get a team in. I've been a part of ownership groups that have dealt with that league and the things that they require. They run a lot of people off. You have to have a major priority investor and about $500,000 really up front to even take a look at getting in one of these leagues. So you're not in a situation like the AAF. A lot of the lesser indoor leagues want to make it with tryout money and this and that, and how many people that they hope to or expect to get in the stands and kind of rob Peter to pay Paul and live week to week. If you want to have a successful arena or indoor team, you have to have that money from a priority investor up front, so you don't run into problems. Same thing as the AAF. They ended up running into problems, and that happens in a lot of these lesser leagues. That's why the IFL, the CIF, and the NOW have been able to keep up and have some good seasons over the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I think people really underestimate what it takes to run these leagues. And I think something that really always interested me and like is always overlooked, in my opinion, is the facilities. Because, Coach, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, are there? I don't think there's a single facility made in North America to just hold indoor football games. They'll play at ice arenas, they'll play at field houses, they'll play wherever they can basically get a spot, and that ranges in quality depending on the league, like you said. But with there being, I mean, there's a huge expense right there. These leagues don't have the money for big, planes to get them everywhere. So that's why you see a lot of regional stuff. I mean, for Pete's sake, I couldn't imagine the Jacksonville Sharks players driving up to Portland, Maine to play the Mammoth. And I mean, especially in these indoor leagues, it is important to get back to your communities and give back to them because, I mean, and keep good relations with the businesses because that hurt the Lehigh Valley Steelhawks last year, and they're not playing anymore. I think the issue, I mean, owners have falling out, and just everybody has a different vision. The first step to unification for these leagues is having a unified rule set because in the National Arena League, or the NAL as you refer to it, Coach, a kick through the upright counts as 2 points for the kicking team. In the Arena Football League, they have the rebound nets. In Champions Indoor Football and the Indoor Football League, if you kick it out the back of the end zone, even if it's through the goalpost, guess what? It's the receiving team's ball on their own 20. If it happens again, it's just a ton of varying rules. And I think the less, not gimmicky, because this isn't quite X League gimmicky yet, but the less variation we have, the closer you can get to saying, all right, here's what we want from X team, like, Sioux Falls Storm, and maybe, I don't know, we'll say the Bismarck Bucks are not meeting those standards. So Bismarck be more like the Storm. Or if you're in the National Arena League, you're saying to, the New York Streets, listen, you play a great game, but your jerseys don't have don't have nameplates yet. Be like the Orlando Predators and get nameplates on there. And I think each of the leagues that you mentioned, Coach, do have good teams. I think it's just weeding the bad ones out, and that's something the National Arena League and Indoor Football League do best, in my opinion. It's getting there at the CIF. I think once they got rid of Dallas Marshals, and Centex Cavalry.
Centex Cavalry, right.
Yeah, things started to look on the up for them. And I think it can happen, these TV deals, but it's going to be hard because the issue right now is everybody is starting up their league. I mean, Coach, just to delve into a few more leagues that kind of say are lesser leagues, you have the International Arena League, you have the A League, you have the New England Arena League, you have the American Arena League. Like, Dan Collinsworth next was proposing to start Gulf Coast Indoor Football. Greg Fernarios was going to start PAF, but that never took off. I could go on and on for a whole day about this, but the point of the matter is there are a lot of smaller leagues that sometimes hurt the look of it. So, like, pay attention to the big four. Champion Indoor Football League, National Arena League, and, of course, the Arena Football League. And I promise you, like, I remember going to my first game last year, not living in New York. Had a phenomenal time. I now got season tickets to the New York Streets, and their first game is at home is next week. I'll be there. I'll be probably going live on my Instagram, so it's going to be fun. And and something I have to say is the prices are, as far as sporting events go, very affordable. I mean, they are asking like $700 for a ticket. I mean, the best seats in the house are going to run you maybe $300, I guess. That's like front row seats, players being hit over the walls into your lap type experience, depending on the league. So it's affordable. I found them more family friendly than the NFL. I mean, obviously they're serving alcohol. That's a given at any sports event. But I didn't see any people openly barfing, like some New Yorker fans, sometimes are. You don't see people rioting after games, Philadelphia Eagles style, when there's a win. It's a very family-friendly environment.
One thing that I noticed, and having the opportunity to work in the front office on a couple different teams, one thing that I noticed about indoor, and we were in the American Indoor Football League, the AIF, and the league was fine for what we wanted to do, and it was affordable for the ownership that we had. A couple of things. Our arena, for instance, was $6,000 per game. Okay. Now, if we put 5,000 or more fans in, we got the arena for free. Okay. Now we would travel to Chicago. I don't want to name the venue or whatever, and we'd play in a soccer house that housed 500, max. And so we're in a 10,000 seat and family arena. We're in one of the nicest facilities in all of indoor football. One thing that I did notice that you were talking about, pardon me?
Was the Sears Center?
No, sir. The family arena in St. Charles, Missouri, just under a tick under 10,000.
Nice.
Yeah, it's one of the nicest arenas in all of indoor. And one thing I would notice at the end of our games when I'd be on the field and you talked about fan friendly, well, we always had a half hour where the fans could come on the field just like most indoor and arena teams. And I always heard from more females, more moms, more girlfriends that liked the indoor game a lot more. They liked the high scoring. They liked the smaller field. Things are easier to keep up with. And they don't really have to know as much about football. They're going to pass every play for the most part, and they can keep up with the game a lot easier. You were talking about the rules. As you said, you could go on and on and on and on. I would love to see those three leagues that are indoor, the NOW, the CIF, and the IFL. I would love to see those three leagues adopt the IFL rules. The IFL rules are made to be the closest to outdoor football of any of the indoor or arena rules, and I think that, as we are talking about transitioning and players moving up and this and that, I think that would be one of the first steps to help. And that would also cut down on that learning curve, Michael, that you talked about, that with the different rules, they affect different players, whether it's two-person high motion or one-person motion or two linebackers in the box and this and that. That would really bring that learning curve back to the pack and make it even for everybody.
Yeah, I enjoyed the IFL since I've started getting back into it. And I just, one last, question here as far as, the arena leagues, playing in the spring and the magnitude of the arena leagues. And, I agree. I don't have as much knowledge on the arena side as you and RJ do, but I do believe that the big four arena leagues that you're talking about are easily, the quality of play is significantly better than the other ones. But with the XFL starting, and with the AAF being defunct, but with the XFL starting, do you think that the quality of play is going to take a hit for these arena leagues, because they do kind of coincide with, when the XFL is going to play? And I know that, there's always players, and there's plenty of players out there that are looking to try to play football and continue. But do you think the quality of play might suffer if the XFL is proven successful for multiple years, or do you think that the arena leagues will be able to sustain?
I think they'll be able to sustain, because that's just additional opportunity for those players out there that are looking for that opportunity. So it's always going to be a stepping stone. You're always going to be going up the ladder, so to speak. So, and there's always players out there, and the players that are looking for that opportunity will slide into those spots. Let's not forget, okay, I can tell you this as an official, as a coach, as a front office executive working with indoor teams. This always happened. Whenever I walked the field in pregame, if there was a guy out there that there was almost, you could tell that, like, what's this guy doing here? I can tell this guy has a skill set that's probably can get him to another level. So that player that you're talking about, usually on the indoor and arena level, stands out. And also, let's remember, whether we're dressing 21 or we have a roster of 30, we only have 3 to 5 players maximum that have that opportunity to even play at an XFL level, let alone an NFL level.
Fair enough.
I also think that for some of these players, it's going to make them train harder, play harder, seeing there's a much more realistic, achievable goal in front of them. It's like holding the bone in front of the dog on a fishing pole, while you're walking it. That thing is going to move quickly. You're going to see your Charles McCauley, your Fabian Guerrero's, your Malachi Joneses fall out even more than they did last year. And that's saying something because they're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. There's the XFL. There's a shiny new toy. You want to go get it? I actually think, if anything, the XFL in the long term will help the quality of play of these major 4 arena leagues and indoor leagues.
I agree.
Definitely. But like you were using a fishing analogy, the AAF threw the line in, and every time they thought they got a bite, they jumped back. The XFL is sitting there waiting. They're waiting for that 20-pound bass to come up and bite on. So, but I mean, it's the truth. You're looking at the AAF, and anytime they got big, something happened. Anytime they had a great weekend, they had great games, something happened. They never could go a weekend without a controversy coming through with any teams. It's one of those things that the AAF, they took players, they took coaches, they took executives, and they were just like, yeah, we're going to do this. This is what's going to happen. Week 6 comes around, or week 7, really, and it's just like, oh yeah, bye. Have a nice day. So the XFL is sticking around. They're just like, we're going to take the year. We're going to build our teams. We're going to build our organizations. And we're going to do this right. While the AAF just came in and started, And then looking at the arena side of it and the indoor side of it, they've been around for a long time. And like Coach and RJ have said, I think Coach said that back in like 2009, 2010, the Arena League went underground and came back and rebranded, and it changed. So they've been around. They've done this for a while. They've changed. They rebranded. They've done things differently, and they've succeeded. So it's not out of the realm of possibility to see these leagues like the XFL come in, take a year to get everything going, and then have a few bumps in the road. It's just, I think the XFL would have a better opportunity with players, with coaches and executives to have bumps in the road and be able to come out clean,
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
I think the XFL. I think the biggest draw for the XFL, or the biggest reason that they would be able to sustain any type of issues that come out, is Vince McMahon's money. Coupled with Oliver Luck's intelligence as far as football is concerned.
Sure, John. What do you think?
Yeah.
Just some irony I got to point out right now. We're hyping up a Vince McMahon football league. At the same time, we're hyping up a Shahid Khan wrestling promotion. I just had to bring that up. I had to bring that up. Back to what you were saying. There had to be a time for that content.
John, how are you? We got a resident White Walker back.
Okay. Long live House Stark, guys. How's everybody doing tonight?
Doing good.
Solid.
All right, good. I jumped in and you guys were talking arena ball, and I believe the question I heard, if you don't mind, was when I kind of came in here is are they going to have a problem sustaining once the XFL gets fired up and going? And
quality of play, John. Not
quality of play. But look, here's a little thought of mine that I haven't really publicly kicked around a whole lot. There are basically 3 leagues that kind of are in the mix right now as far as arena is concerned. That's the IFL, the NAL, and the AFL, National Arena League, Arena Football League, and the Indoor Football League. Now, we know that some teams have come from the AFL and gone over to the IFL before. I believe the NAL is the newest to the game of the 3 leagues, if I'm not mistaken. What if, as smart as there's nobody that studies, resumes like I do and thinks highly of certain people as I do.
Including yourself.
Myself on the shelf. Let's put the elf on the shelf for a second, or the Zool on the stool here. But, I think Oliver Luck is smart enough to kind of even think about, why not have a working relationship with some of these indoor football leagues, in a sense that, potentially, hey, get this. they could actually be the minor league for the XFL. I mean, the XFL is incorporating a lot of new rules and incorporating rules from all kinds of leagues. I mean, they're incorporating rules from the NFL, the CFL, the USFL. I mean, they're getting rules all over the place. They're getting, technology from all kinds of sports right now. And, they're going to come out of the Roman candle, firing on all cylinders here. And, we all want them, to experience the best of luck in this endeavor. But there's almost an XFL team in every area that there is arena ball. Now, with that being said, we know everything's bigger in Texas. We know that Texas doesn't have any arena ball presence because they like 100-yard gridiron football. Okay.
Well, that's not true. That's not true. They have the
Texas has a lot of presence in indoor.
They have.
Do they?
Amarillo, Revolution, Amarillo Venom. At one point, they had their own football league, the Lone Star Football League. It was that big there at one point. So
at one point. So, but okay. So hold on now. I was kind of looking at those three leagues. All right. I didn't see anything from the Pacific Northwest. We're talking everything from Northern California on up to the Canadian border. I didn't see much right smack dab in Southern Central America, which is essentially the entire state of Texas. But what I'm trying to say here is what if, you know what I mean, some of the, the teams start taking on players and start grooming them for a league like the XFL, because they can much more easier establish a relationship with them than they can the big old bad wolf in the NFL. It's just a thought that I had, but I don't think that the arena ball, indoor football leagues are going to have a problem sustaining, level of play or quality of the game, because number one, they've got their own fan base. Okay, there are some people that watch arena ball more religiously than they watch, any other variety of football.
Arizona Rattlers were bringing in more per game than the Arizona Hotshots were. So
they're probably definitely drawing more than the two or three of the Washington-based sports franchises. I can assure you that. But but there you go. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. It has its own presence and its own following in its community. And some cities are more heavily weighed upon than others, obviously. Cities that are new to the game, New York Streets, even the Valor and Brigade to a certain extent. Now we got two new franchises in the AFL. Maybe Lynn can speak more than me. I know they just got the Barnstormers. I was going to say Brainstormers. But they've come over from the AFL kind of quasi recently, and I believe they've got a couple of new teams in that league as well. So if you're a new squad, you're gonna maybe struggle out the gate. But if you're a new squad coming to a town that hasn't had anything in a while, maybe they're just grateful for football, and they like to come out and
Tucson, Arizona has shown out for the Sugar Skulls, and part of the reason that is because Kevin Guy, the Rattlers head coach, invested money in it. I honestly believe the Tucson Sugar Skulls would not be where they are today, popularity-wise, take the financials out for a second, if Kevin Guy's name was not attached to it.
If the San Diego Strike Force could get a defense, that team would probably start drawing a lot more, because that offense is fun to watch.
All right, so first of all, defense and indoor football should never be used in the same sentence.
Well, the Green Bay Blizzards scored 3 points in a game earlier this year. So I mean, defense still plays a game. They still play a part in the indoor league.
Is that
particularly the IFL, like we were talking about, because of the rules.
Absolutely.
Is that a case of a resistible force or a movable object? You got to ask yourself.
Both. But the IFL, though, for sure. I mean, they absolutely they are that rule base is a lot more balanced as far as defense and the offense, and like Lynn was saying, it's very much closer to being a more workable developmental system for certain players, because it's so balanced.
Well, it's the closest set of rules as far as indoor and arena are concerned that are comparable to 11-man outdoor football.
Yes,
guys.
exactly. Yeah.
Very true. Very true. But kind of want to backtrack a little bit. Go back to the XFL real quick. John, I know you weren't here for the better part of the show, but we brought up the fact that this coming Tuesday that the New York team is going to announce their general manager and their head coach in the XFL. Do you think we're going to get team names in the coming weeks, or do you think that they're still going to hold that off until they get all the personnel accounted for with each team?
I don't think that we're going to get any team names. I don't think we'll get any of the colors, any of that until they announce all 8 head coaches at the very least. I think they'd like to announce all 8 head coaches, possibly offensive, defensive coordinators, and team presidents, maybe even marketing managers and so on and so forth, marketing VPs, whatever, before they give us names and everything. They originally had that timeline of April, okay? And I think maybe when they kind of signed on with the Spring League a little late in the game, they said, you know what? Let's grab a hold of this Spring League thing. We can test a lot of our rules out, because they tested them out with Your Call Football. They even tested them out about a year ago with another. I think it might have been in Texas. It was at some college. God, I can't remember where they were or what was the school that they were testing out some of their rules with. I remember seeing a video that had some kick return action, stuff like that going on. I cannot remember locations and entities at this moment. But what my point is that they announced this a partnership with the Spring League. Okay, it must have been just up for grabs, and NFL was kind of like take it or leave it, whatever. They're like, whatever, Spring League. What are we get? What did they get out of the last Spring League? They kind of frowned upon it, I guess, the NFL. They just think it'd be good for it. So the XFL jumped in, and it was a perfect opportunity for them to not only test out their rules, take a look at some players that are probably right, on the cusp of the level of, being professional football ready at their level of play here, which is right just a notch below what the NFL is doing. You know what I mean? It's bottom of the roster level. That's what they're shooting for, right, guys? So I think that threw a little bit of a monkey wrench into their plans. And then, of course, you had the college pro days. Remember, we saw Stoops and Zorn side by side. Zorn working with that quarterback out of Oklahoma, probably going to go number 1 or top 10 or whatever. We're going to be one of
Kyler Murray.
He's going to be one of the first 1 or 2 quarterbacks, at worst 3rd quarterback taken in the draft if you don't decide to play baseball and screw everybody over and have them waste a draft pick. But I think that was a golden, egg opportunity, for the XFL that they couldn't pass up. That they had the pro days, like I said, and it wasn't just the Oklahoma pro day. It was all the colleges were having the pro days in the month of March. So, I mean, they probably had to hire 20 new guys or this company. I can't remember their scouting company that they've hired. I can't remember it right now, what the name of it is. But they're looked upon highly in their line of work. And they probably ran a skeleton crew as far as the eye can see to see as many pro days as they possibly could, compile some notes, make some reports on these players at all these school pro days, and then you had probably some, personal Terrell Owens style pro days that happen in somebody's backyard, you know what I mean, with a camcorder, all right, and a Betamax tape. So that's monkey wrench number 2. You have the Spring League, then you got the pro days, and then you've got the AAF drama. Okay, so I remember a long time ago I happened to be listening to Howard Stern show once upon a time, close to 20 years ago now. And they straight up asked him, it was, what's his name? Tommy, the other personality on the Howard Stern show, not the woman, but the other guy that's been on his show forever. He straight up asked him, are you going to buy the WCW? And Vince McMahon said yes. This is an interview with Vince McMahon. I had no effing clue that the WCW was potentially going to be bought up by Vince McMahon at that point. That was the very first thing I'd ever heard about it. And at that point in my life, I was a diehard wrestling fan. I used to participate in functions just like we're doing right now. It was the podcast before the podcast was invented, the after Monday Night Raw show and stuff like that. The Monday Night Wars, whatever. So Vince McMahon knew that something was rotten in Denmark with the alliance. And I think the month of March not only did they have to deal with the spring league and the pro days, but they had to deal with keeping their close eyes on what was happening in the alliance. And oh boy, it looks like we're going to have a lot of players and a lot of coaches and a lot of, potential executive level people coming available here. Look what's going on. They are really going diarrhea in the sheets right now on themselves. We're going to have to maybe pump the brakes, Labani, on hiring coaches right now, because there might be some good ones coming up here available pretty soon. So I think that's what happened. And everything that was planned for April got kind of, bottlenecked into May now. And that will include those team names. So that took me a long time to answer your very simple question, but you have to know the how and the why and all that other stuff. So I think we're going to see some coaches coming up Tuesday, New York. They're going to announce team president and coach. It's not really up to me to make any bold predictions right now. I just know Greg Schiano, pulled a Brad Childress, said he wanted to spend more time with his family, but what happened to Brad Childress? He ended up on an NFL roster. He's already hired by somebody, so he wanted all this, great quality time with his family. Well, that lasted a month. And then
Schiano doesn't fit the mold of what the XFL has been doing.
Absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct, but the timing is fishy.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, defensive coordinator. I mean,
you can say that about Urban Meyer too.
Well, okay. So here's what we got to ask ourselves. We know that $250,000 is the going rate for a coordinator in the XFL, and we know that $500,000 is the going rate for a head coach. What was he getting paid in New England? Money talks, guys. And it ain't a far drive from Boston to New York. Maybe he's going to be New York's defensive coordinator or LA's defensive coordinator. Maybe he's going to be a coach somewhere.
But even as a head coach, though, he's probably making less money than he would as a defensive coordinator for New England. So
maybe not. They're tighter than a Bulls keister and fly season up there in New England. I mean, they fill their roster with a lot of.
Yeah, when Charlie Weiss and Romeo Cornell were there, they were making over $1 million apiece each year.
Yeah, well, they also had Randy Moss and stuff. Now
Neither one of them.
Now they got a lot more white guys catching footballs up there in New England these days. So they're a little cheaper on the payroll now. They've got more role player. Bill Belichick. Okay, this is not going to become a Bill Belichick, Tarzan swing from the twig and berries moment here, but nobody can find role players better than Bill Belichick, and role players are cheaper than superstars. And it doesn't matter, because Bill Belichick figures out how to turn a role player into a temporary superstar until you decide to sign with somebody else, and then you become a nobody. So this is what they do. This is who they are, New England, and they've got 6 rings. Get over it. That's what it's who he is. All right, so let's go back to Schiano. He does seem like a potentially good possible option for the league. I don't know what capacity. I just know he's from 17.2 miles from MetLife Stadium. That's all I can say about the guy.
How do you have the exact mileage?
Because I looked this stuff up. I have nothing. I neglect my 4 children. I kick my half pit bull boxer on a daily basis, and I Google stuff. That's
okay. If you kick it, how does it not bite your leg off? That's a boxer pit bull mix.
It's a well-trained kick dog. So it's what I'm trying to say is that I wouldn't rule out the potential. We've seen coaches say they want to spend more time with family, and then all of a sudden, voila, they've got a new job.
What about a guy like Vinny Testaverde?
I love Vinny Testaverde, but we haven't. Isn't he like going to play for the Jets again this year or something?
No, but I'm saying that as far as like the quarterback team is concerned, and he always wanted to get into coaching. What happens if maybe this is an opportunity for him to come out and just be like, I can get into it with the XFL?
Well, I don't think New York is the type of city for a guy like Rick Neuheisel or our beloved Coach Spurrier. I maybe a guy like Erickson that was up there in, Martz maybe can handle the big city, the Big Apple. But even both of those guys at their ages, I don't know that I see both of those guys struggling with Manhattan traffic. I just don't see it happen. But you sure ain't getting the old ball coach to sit in traffic up in New York or northern New Jersey. He forgot about it. But I do agree.
Subway.
I do agree. Quarterback-friendly head coaches, and then they're free to pick up your Tim Lewis's and Singletary's and Bob Sanders and all these other guys that are now out of work, kind of licking their thumb, sticking it up in the air in the
But
shoulder.
wouldn't that be like Rex Ryan coming back then, since he's already used to the New York, Jersey area?
Who's that?
Rex Ryan.
Oh, ew.
Well, we know we're
I
RJ
think
fans.
if we see Rex Ryan in the league in any capacity, it's going to be in Houston, where his daddy coached.
Oh,
I
God.
was just wondering as far as the quarterback base is concerned, because I mean we're throwing names around like Rex Ryan and RJ Ciancio, but I mean really honestly, the quarterback play is what's going to drive this league. That's been the thing that Oliver Luck has talked about from the jump, the thing that Vince McMahon has been pushing. And they have the coaches in place with the GMs that are all quarterback based. I mean, they're all coaches at one point in time. A guy like Greg Schiano and Rex Ryans of the world, like they don't fit what the XFL is trying to do.
Hold on, Michael. I just had a light bulb moment.
Boy.
We know that our head coach Pep Hamilton was working with Andrew Luck, who is our beloved commissioner's son. Worked with him, I believe, twice in
Stanford and Indianapolis. Yep.
Okay, so there was already a connection built in there. Guess who was a quarterback in Houston when Orion was a coach there?
Matt Schwab?
His name was Oliver Luck, sir. He was the backup for a guy named Warren Moon.
That was
really?
Brian.
So something tells me that Oliver Luck and one of them Ryan brothers, or both of them, and their late father, probably have a pretty good relationship. So it wouldn't actually surprise me to see old Rexy, the one that doesn't throw 4 interceptions a game.
Well, it depends.
End up in a spot like Houston because
he just gets a bunt fumble out of Martin Sanchez.
It also depends if they can compete with his ESPN contract too, though.
True.
Well, you're correct.
I'm just thinking as far as the XFL is concerned, with the quarterback play being pushed as far as the premier thing in this league, like they're gonna find connections for quarterback coaches, and that's why I said Vinny Testaverde is because as a former quarterback, he played for the Jets, was successful with the Jets, mediocrely, I guess, because nobody's really ever successful with the Jets, and I mean,
Broadway Joe. Hot take. Broadway Joe overrated.
Don't let him hear you say that.
Broadway Joe.
Yeah.
Hey, whatever. I mean, he's probably the most successful Jets player that they've ever had. But I just was tying in the fact that with the quarterback play aspect of things. I mean, idealistically, John, where you've spent a lot of time with this, is there a quarterback connection to the New York area that, as far as either a quarterback's coach or an offensive quote unquote guru that develops quarterbacks, is there any there, whether it's the Jets or the Giants, that stick out to you that is a free agent right now that doesn't have a job? Because I mean, if we're looking at the AFL side of things, Mike Martz coached in San Diego, so you could make a connection to Los Angeles possibly, but likely St. Louis would be an area for a guy like Martz. Erickson and Neuheisel, I don't know if their connection really fits in with the XFL style as far as quarterbacks are concerned. Spurrier is an offensive genius, but is he really a quarterback guy?
He made Tebow work.
Well, right.
Urban Meyer, and he got
Urban Meyer did too. So I'm wondering, John, is there any name that has popped up that's related strictly to like a quarterback coaching position or quarterback quote unquote guru or offensive mind that's linked heavily to New York?
Yeah, and it's a guy that I haven't seen in a while. Who was the coach that taught Tiki Barber to the 5-point grip on the ball? He had trouble fumbling, and then
that was Tom Coughlin.
No,
he's in Jacksonville.
No. Before Coughlin, he was the one that moved his chips into the middle and guaranteed they'd go to the playoffs, and they did.
Jim Fossil?
Jim Fossil is a quarterback-friendly coach
There's a name.
who knows how to deal with the media in New York. I don't think he's hated in New York. I'm not a New Yorker. I cannot state this as fact. But I don't think that him being let go was a result of consistent poor performance, because he had them pretty competitive. If you remember, they went pretty deep into playoffs a couple times. They do-si-do divisions with Andy Reid and McNabb there during that era. The Redskins were chasing their tail, and Dallas Cowboys were.
I got it, John. Phil Simms.
That's it. I will leave this show. I will step down from my contributorship position on this podcast if Phil Simms comes anywhere near this league. That SOB will bring his son along with him and try to tack on BR Live while he's at it. So let's not say the PS word anymore. Let's wash our hands, sanitize after antibacterial foaming soap. Give a shower, apply some Gojo to our souls, and get Michael ever uttered those two words back to back. I don't even want to know a guy named Phil or play the game SimCity again for the rest of the day. Okay? That guy just makes me throw up all over my thoughts. Oh, did I tell you? Hey, look. No.
I don't think John's watching any Sunday Night Football this year.
It's a big no on Phil Simms, okay? So
what you're saying is there's a chance.
I'll tell you what. You got a better chance at beating Thanos in Thumb War with the Infinity Gauntlet on. Dude, Phil Simms hired by the XFL right now, okay?
So John, wait. Does that mean you're not going to watch any Sunday Night Football this year?
I tell you what, you know the funny thing is about Phil Simms? I remember when Mike Florio got bought up, Pro Football Talk got bought up at NBC, by NBC. And I remember when he made the announcement, do not adjust your eyes. If you notice some wallpaper differences in the background, we have a new sponsor. It's NBC. We'll be doing the same thing we've always done, but some things about the layout of this website will be changed, and I hated it. Okay, and then all of a sudden he jumped on the will not ever say the word Redskins bandwagon, right? Because that was fired up by NBC, who is owned by the Lurie family, I believe. And if you follow the money, they've got deep ties with the channel NBC. So what my point is that all of a sudden Mike Florio didn't want to say the word Redskins, and I don't think he still does to this very day because NBC writes his checks now. But Phil Simms publicly stated he would never say the word Redskins. Well, unfortunately, he had like 2 or 3 Redskins games to call that year, and I have a feeling somebody in the network or from the NFL said, I'm sorry, Mr. Simms, if you want your network to continue hosting NFL games, you're going to say the name of the team we tell you to say. So he, against his will, he has said the word Redskins during the airing of games when he has.
I'm glad they removed him from broadcasting.
Right, but if you know,
put him on that stupid show on CBS because he was the worst. I'm glad Romo replaced him.
Dude, I love Romo.
Horrible.
He thinks very highly of his opinions. And I don't think he
thinks his son's a good quarterback.
I don't think he has enough humility to join the fray of the XFL. I got something for us real quick. I know we're talking about potential New York guys, but we've got a little thing here with Daryl Johnston. I think a guy like Moose would be a better personality fit for the XFL, first of all. And I'll segue into this. Moose Johnston, a guy that's now unemployed. He was the San Antonio Commanders.
He's going to go back to Fox to announce games.
Well, he could go back to Fox, but guess who's now laying in the sheets of the bed of Fox? The XFL. Seems like perfect timing. So, Daryl Johnson.
They're going to announce that broadcast deal during the draft week, too, by the way. I got a feeling it's going to be in 2 weeks they're going to announce that broadcast deal.
Wouldn't surprise me if they do it during the first commercial break of the first round of the draft.
That's what I'm saying. Like I literally am expecting Vince to make a splash on NFL draft day as far as the announcement of where the games are going to be, broadcasted from.
No 70-year-old man I know can pull their junk out on television quite like Vince when they feel like it. So Moose Johnston is a guy who's got not only great leadership, lead by example qualities about him, but he's the type of personality that I think can help run a team. You've got another team, Houston, that's available, maybe even in a position in Dallas. Okay. Maybe a personality on TV, but
team president.
He's got a brilliant offensive mind. I don't know how much you've listened to him on the air. He's got a brilliant offensive mind. He wouldn't be the first guy to come out of a booth and get, stand on the sideline and coach football.
Team president in Dallas, John?
Okay, man, Houston, Dallas. I mean, he's loved in Dallas.
I mean, they haven't announced the team president yet. Team president in Dallas?
That elongated moose that you used to hear, I believe that was probably invented in Dallas for him. Okay, and now they see it in every city for every player that ends in an "oo" or has an "oo" in his name. But it started with Moose, and I've stood next to the guy. He's a load-bearing wall, and he commands attention and respect, regardless of the room that he's standing in. And a guy like him is somebody I'd love to see in the league in some form of capacity, whether it be a coach, team president, personality for television, so on and so forth. But go back to, I guess playing the guessing game, we talked about the ex-Giants coach. We've mentioned Ciancio. We've mentioned a Ryan guy. We've got the three major offensive quarterback-friendly coaches that are now out of work from the AAF. We've already heard Steve Spurrier would pick up the phone if he saw the number on caller ID. So, there's lots of potential out there. One of you guys just said Meyer a couple minutes ago. So
Urban Meyer.
There's lots of options. What a great time to be an XFL fan. We're in the heat of the moment right here. Right, it's still in the womb here. All the eggs haven't even made way for all these little XFL sperms. They're not even all the octuplets are even formed yet. You know what I mean? And we're going bonkers. It's just a great time to be a fan.
I mean, you aren't wrong on that one. The XFL, honestly, I want to say this: if the XFL comes into Houston and wins the championship before the Texans, the Texans are going to have a hard time winning over that city after that. If one football team wins a championship over the biggest one, then they're going to have an issue.
Have you guys? I know I was late to the game. How about another personality? Have you guys brought up the fact that Gronkowski has had interest in joining the WWE and the fact that he was also a mega star in New England, arguably one of the greatest tight ends to play the game, for the New England Super Bowl winning on a consistent basis Patriots. A guy like that, do we think a guy like that can play dual roles? Obviously, from a paycheck standpoint, the answer is yes. Although the XFL and the WWE are two different entities, companies. But do we think that would be a good idea of a crossover and something that could help the league? Like maybe, him hop into the booth, maybe do a, jump in on a 4-man panel and do the, highlight show at the end of every, week of games or something like that. Has that been brought up yet? I'm not sure.
Well, I mean, I think as far as Gronkowski is concerned, I mean, I honestly don't think that he's going to do anything with the WWE at all. I think
why not?
I think for one thing, I think the part of the biggest reasons why he retired is because of his body. I think that it wasn't holding up for him. He was in a lot of pain.
He had arm and leg problems for a while.
Yeah, arm, leg, back, shoulder, ankle.
Like he had a lot.
I mean, he was literally on the injury report, I think, more than the words injury report were. And I think that with the WWE, they travel, even with part-time shows, he'd have to start off by doing some house shows and really like getting his body acclimated to learning how to take bumps and all that other stuff. So I just think I think for the WWE side, it's going to be a no-go. But I think also for the football side, as far as coaching,
he can do highlights.
I don't think that it's going to be a thing for him though. I think Hollywood is really going to be his thing. The Rock I think the Rock offered, sent the contract out his way and said, "Come to my production company." And
I mean, Roman's going to be his brother.
There's another guy that has an excellent relationship with Vince McMahon. Oh, by the way.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
I mean,
he does.
Vince made him. Okay. I remember I was watching The Rock the first time that he advertised the shirt that The Rock made famous, and he became The Rock. He went from Rocky Maivia to The Rock, and I said, "Oh my God!" I all of a sudden love this guy. His little flat top Jerry curl thing and everything. The transition to this Rock character was just, I was there. I remember.
Well, yeah, absolutely, and the relationship's fantastic. But again, he makes so much money just doing movies. It doesn't even nothing else ever, matters as far as, the sporting world is concerned. He gets to work at his own schedule, make his own money. He's just started his own production company, which, by the way, just produced the movie Shazam. So it's not like The Rock, somebody like The Rock with the money that he's made through Hollywood is going to offer somebody like Gronkowski a contract that they're both just going to be like, well, let's go back to football. Personally, I'd like to see them both because they both have the personality to do it. But I also think that if The Rock or Gronkowski was to come into the XFL, I think XFL fans would have pretty much, or not the XFL fans, but the XFL middle road people that aren't sure about the league might be like, oh, this is XFL 2000 again with all the gimmicks. We don't want this.
Well, what I think they dropped the ball on when they, invited The Rock to come, stand on the 50 and talk a bunch of stuff. We're going to lay the smackdown on the sport of football and if you smell what The Rock is cooking and all that. Okay, that was kid games. Okay, I think they're ready to play big boy football now, and I think what we're all forgetting here is The Rock was an excellent starting left end for the Miami Hurricanes, and in his senior year, he got hurt, and some backup player came up and took his starting spot. That guy's name was Warren Sapp. He turned out to be pretty good. So The Rock never, got his starting job back because some no-name named Warren Sapp took over and, never looked back. But long story short, he knows the game of football. And he's a very smart guy, and he's got a lot of charisma and personality. And I think if they don't typecast him like The Rock, then I think he could be very valuable for the league. More people these days know The Rock for the show Ballers and his role on Fast and the Furious than they do of him being Rocky Maivia or, the People's Eyebrow. All right.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't disagree with you, and I'm not.
And ditto, Gronkowski. Well, here's one thing you're forgetting about Gronkowski. He doesn't have to come in and be Matt and Jeff Hardy and coming off the top turnbuckle doing senton bombs and all that. Okay, all he needs to do is come in, talk some trash, soft bump here and there. Somebody put him over, and people will eat it up because that's what WWF fans do. We just want to buy. The wrestling buddies, and
but not with the direction the WWE's headed in now. There's no way.
I can't answer that.
There's no way. Well, I know, but I'm just saying that's the reason why. I mean, these guys put their body on the full-time guys put their body on the line 300 days a year.
I ain't saying you gotta put a belt on him and have him walk around and tap it like the Hulkster in the NWO without ever having to defend it.
No, but I'm just saying that I'm saying that for his body though, it just wouldn't hold up. For the XFL side of things, I mean, it would be fantastic if he was able to be a broadcast guy or come in and maybe even do, maybe like an assistant coach type thing. But I just think the money's going to be too much in Hollywood where he doesn't have to worry about his body and he doesn't have to tie his time up, focusing. Because, I mean, make no mistake about it. I mean, even if they play a 10-game schedule in the spring, these guys are they have to work for 200-plus days a year. Between scouting and getting people out there and watching film and, putting offense and defense in place, especially if there's going to be more than one season. It's not like these guys are just going to be like, oh, well, we can come in for the month of January and February, and then once the season ends in May, we can just dilly off for a few months. That's not how that goes.
Yeah.
So, I think for the movie side of things, he can go in and make, $4 or $5 million a movie. Work for 3 months out of the year and take a year off if he wants to.
Like, if I don't see a movie with him and Zac Efron doing like a beach movie next year, then there's something wrong.
Baywatch?
Baywatch 2.
Who is Zac Efron?
Don't worry about it, John.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it, John. You're good.
Does he at least look like Tom Hanks? That's all I need.
But no.
No. You're
not at
way
all
off the spectrum. It's not even close. What?
Remember, Tom is Forrest and Zach is High School Musical.
Yeah, High School Musical. Exactly.
All right. So, did we talk about? Did you guys end up talking about the CFL being blocked from the contracts of?
Yes,
we opened that up.
We did that.
Okay, then I won't bother. But hey. The XFL's got a lot of looking up here. Here's something that I mentioned. I talked to I talked to our friend over at XFL 2K a little bit on the phone today, and we were both in agreement that, we can really help this league make it. We did our best, and we share posts and we find articles and write about things and give our thoughts and entice people to enjoy the Alliance of American Football, and it just didn't make it, right? They had a bad business plan, maybe doomed to start, what have you. Here in comes XFL, phenomenal business plan, great leadership. They got briefcases of money. I got a dump truck full of briefcases of money coming right behind them. This is a freight train, coming, right down the pike here. And how cool is it that we've got a golden goose opportunity to help this league jettison into the next level? I ain't talking any, Donald Trump, let's move this league to fall thing. But you know what? The more we hit harder at these topics together as a group, the better off this league is, and talking about all this other kinds of football and intertwining all the professional football that there is available, even non-professional football, and getting fans together, from this brand of football, now interested in this brand of football, now interested in the XFL. It's only good news for this league, and furthers their chance of success, in my opinion. So I'm just real grateful, and I think we ought to be real fortunate to have a little platform to discuss it. So I honestly just thank all of you guys for being here tonight, and thanks for having me.
Well, we're glad that you were able to stop on by after watching the start of season 8 of Game of Thrones.
It's going down in the north, my friend.
Oh yeah, winter is here, and it's staying for 8 episodes.
I tell you what, you wouldn't want to play any spring ball in the north. All right,
you're not wrong. White Walkers everywhere.
Hosting a game in April. I saw the snow on the ground up there tonight, and I tell you what, not only would you be invaded by unlikely dead people before halftime, but it's tough weather up there right now, and it's just not fit together. So
exactly.
You want to keep the game in the spring in Dorne, King's Landing area. Everything below the neck is fine.
Well, thank you all for coming out tonight and listening in. John, Michael, RJ, Coach, thanks for joining in. This has been a good show, and I want to finish it off with saying, Tom Dundon, your team is down 0-2 in the playoffs, and I hope you lose the rest. Good night, everybody.
Yes, caps.
The Alternative Football News Network. History in the making.